You ever come across a book that's like super short, less than 160 pages, but has somehow quietly taken over the world? A simple little guide that promises personal freedom and has just captivated millions? Well, today we're going to dive into this modern self help classic and figure out what in the world makes it so powerful. And when I say it's had a massive impact, I am not kidding. The numbers are just wild. In the United States alone, The Four Agreements has sold over 15 million copies. And this isn't some flash in the pan either. It has been a fixture on the New York Times bestseller list for more than a decade. So, yeah, this is way more than just a book. It's a full-blown global phenomenon. It has what you might call a near messianic following in the self-help world, which brings us to the big question for today's explainer. What is it about these four simple ideas that makes them so powerful? So, the book we're talking about is The Four Agreements, a practical guide to personal freedom written by Don Miguel Ruiz. It first hit the shelves way back in 1997, and since then, its message has been translated into over 52 languages, spreading this ancient Toltec wisdom to pretty much every corner of the globe. Okay, but to really get the book, you gotta understand the author. And Don Miguel Ruiz is such a fascinating guy. He's this man who kind of stands at the crossroads of modern science and ancient wisdom. His background is really a story of two completely different worlds colliding. What's so interesting here is the journey. See, Ruiz was actually born into a family of healers and shamans in Mexico, but he decided to go a different route. He became a licensed neurosurgeon in 1979. Then something shifted. In 1986, he left his entire medical practice behind because he felt this calling to share the Toltec philosophy of his ancestors. Think about that. He went from being a man of science, literally exploring the physical brain, to a spiritual teacher exploring the human mind. Now, at the very heart of this book is a core problem that Ruiz says affects every single one of us. And he uses this really powerful, kind of jarring word for it, the domestication of humans. It's his metaphor for how society basically tames our wild, authentic selves, and how, in the process, we lose our way. So what exactly does he mean by domestication? Well, according to Ruiz, it's the root of all our self-limiting beliefs. It's that system of rewards and punishments we learn as kids, the one that slowly teaches us to stop being who we really are just to please other people. And he says this whole process is what robs us of our joy and creates all this needless suffering in our lives. And here's how he breaks down that process. First, we start out totally authentic, right? As kids, we just follow our joy. Then, through reward and punishment, we start internalizing what he calls a book of law, all the rules about what's good and bad. And finally, that outside system becomes an inner judge, this voice inside our own heads that beats us up whenever we break the rules. We end up losing ourselves, and we spend the rest of our lives looking for that freedom we used to have. So, if domestication is the problem, what's the solution? Well, this is where Ruiz offers this incredibly powerful, super practical code of conduct. It's designed to help us break those old, self-limiting beliefs and take back our personal power. And these, of course, are the four agreements. All right, the first agreement is, you could argue, the most important one. The word impeccable literally means without sin. So to be impeccable with your word means to stop using your words to sin against yourself or anyone else. It means you speak with integrity. You say only what you mean. You stop gossiping. You stop that negative self-talk. It's all about using the incredible power of your word for truth and for love. Agreement number 2 is like a powerful shield for your heart. It's this huge realization that what other people say and do, it's a reflection of their reality, not yours. This idea pops up everywhere, from ancient Stoicism to modern therapy. We can't control what other people do, but we can control how we respond. When you stop taking things personally, you stop letting other people dictate your own peace of mind. And this quote just nails it. Ruiz is basically saying that when you become immune to the opinions and actions of other people, you can't be a victim of all that needless suffering anymore. You're freeing yourself from carrying around these emotional burdens that were never even yours to begin with. The third agreement goes right after a huge source of conflict in our lives, making assumptions. In psychology, they actually call this a cognitive distortion. Our brain just makes up stories to fill in the blanks. Ruiz's solution is simple, but it takes courage. Ask questions. Communicate clearly. If you can find the guts to ask for clarity instead of just assuming, you can stop so much drama and misunderstanding before it even starts. And finally, the fourth agreement, which really ties all the others together: always do your best. Now, the key here is that your best isn't some fixed, perfect standard. It's going to change. Some days your best is incredible, other days your best is just getting out of bed. And that's okay. By just committing to doing your best, whatever that looks like in the moment, you stop the self-judgment and the regret. So, the simplicity of these agreements is their greatest strength. And, if you ask the critics, it's also their greatest weakness. Not everyone is totally convinced that this simple framework is really enough. And right here, you can see the main tension. The book promises this direct path to freedom and happiness, but the critics, they argue it just lacks nuance. They worry that it way oversimplifies these incredibly complex issues. Things like deep-seated trauma, systemic problems in society, or serious mental health conditions that often need a lot more than just a new mindset. One reviewer, Carmen Ho, put it really well. She suggested the book can sometimes feel like a beautifully branded booklet of common sense. Her point is that for some of life's deepest wounds, a few simple agreements might not just be insufficient. They could even feel a little dismissive of what people are really going through. So where does that leave us? On one hand, you've got millions and millions of people who swear these four simple rules completely change their lives. And on the other, you have this really valid concern that life's toughest problems just can't be solved that easily. And all of this brings us to one final critical question that this whole phenomenon really rests on. It's a question about the very nature of wisdom itself. So, is the Four Agreements a profound, simple guide to reclaiming your personal freedom, one that cuts through all the noise of modern life? Or is it a dangerous oversimplification that kind of papers over deep, complex issues? The answer, I think, is a personal agreement that every single reader has to make for themselves.